this is the most important and crucial period of your lives, for what you do now and what you decide now at this age may well determine which way your life shall go. And the question is whether you have a proper, a solid, and a sound blueprint. And I want to suggest some of the things that should be in your life's blueprint. Number one in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. And always feel that your life has ultimate significance. Secondly, in your life's blueprint, you must have, as a basic principle, the determination to achieve excellence in your various fields of endeavor. You're going to be deciding as the days and the years unfold what you will do in life, what your life's work will be. Once you discover what it will be, set out to do it, and to do it well. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. For it isn't by signs that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are. Finally, in your life's blueprint must be a commitment to the eternal principles of beauty, love, and justice. Well, life for none of us has been a crystal staff, but we must keep moving. We must keep going. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl, but by all means, keep moving.
All right, all right. You had to cut off my main man, Mr. Ric Flair. I want to welcome everyone to the 1Hunnid Health Show, the the MLK Dream Edition. I look forward to August every single year. That was a bit of a twist of another speech that he gave that I really truly goes right into what we're going to be talking about. I cannot wait for you guys to meet my special guest this month. We got Hurricane Ed in the building. How you doing today, sir?
Doing great, Shawnte. Thank you so much.
I feel like I got a release of Ric Flair there. Listen.
Come on.
Yes, I'm so excited. Please tell the people a little bit about yourself, Ed.
Man, you got the right guy for today. So I've always been just this great deep thinker like Dr. King. I love going deep with people. I always say, you know, I was raised by Oprah Winfrey and Tony Robbins, you know, like I have both of those sides of my personality. And I know after meeting you in person, you do too. You love to get to the meaning and the root and the depth, but you also have this spirit to make people feel seen and heard and just truly felt. And I love that about you. And so that is who I am. I'm this crazy 22-year hurricane chasing Air Force operator flying into death and destruction and chaos, right? But at the same time, you know, I love to be grounded, and relationships and health and deep, meaningful quality experiences in life for myself, my loved ones, my closest friends and family and coworkers. That's always been who I am. So when I'm on the ground, those things are really what's important to me, is making really meaningful depth of life's experiences. Like the day I met you at the XP Mentor Conference, you know, we connected immediately because we have aligned values and goals. Thank you so much, Shawnte.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, I got to get started with a little fun game I like to torture people with in the beginning, which is, all right, you got 5 words. All right. You got to tell us about yourself or things you care about or adjectives that you feel like sum
Yeah.
you up or the things that you're about. You got five
And
words that you can
if I
choose.
can only
And what
use
are your
5,
5?
huh? Okay, you hold me to the 5 because there's so many concepts and parts of my personality, and to be able to boil it down. I literally glanced over the questions. I looked over them with my teenage daughter. I'm raising on my own today, so that's my give back, or my reward, I guess, for having to get to fly around the world all these years, is now I get to be grounded. My first book, Shawnte, is going to be grounded because she literally keeps me grounded. And so I went over the questions with her a little bit. I didn't want to be too prepared, but man, just the first question alone, I wrote down a whole sheet of paper, so I got to pull from these the 5 things. I have so many little things that are like concepts, one-off, ideas and things that resonate with me. I had a grandmother that really was real and raw, and very outgoing. I'm sure you did too, or you wouldn't be who you are. So I'm real. So the real part, I guess, would be authenticity. Authenticity has to be one of
Authenticity.
my
All right.
things. Like, I have to be me and true to myself, to show up myself every day, the good, the bad, the ugly. So authenticity, being able to express myself and be vulnerable, I guess, is the raw part. And that is missing in this world. When people really show up and own themselves and be true to themselves and can express it in a way that really gets others to see them, that they have flaws. We're all humans on a journey. And when we can express ourselves and show some vulnerability, I think that really makes people receive us and reciprocate that true sense of self, and they want to give back the same. And so
Absolutely. You got
vulnerability.
4 more.
Okay. A responsibility has to be there, because as a service member, you have to show up each and every day and own absolutely every part of your being. And when you make a mistake, standing up. And one of the best moments of my career was a pilot that almost crashed the airplane, and we came home to live to tell about the story. But he immediately stood on the stage and said, "I made a mistake, and I want all of you to learn from it." And so that's went deep into my soul that day, and I always have lived that way on and off the airplane. So having extreme responsibility. Another would be progress. I feel my best self when I'm moving forward and have this consonance in my life of, am I growing? And not just in the mindset, but actually seeing it on paper, feeling it in relationships. And knowing deep that I'm learning and building skills that are moving me forward in life, and I'm not just stagnant and in a loop. And so I always am doing self-assessments and making sure that I'm pushing myself with good pressure and the right kind of pressure at the right time. And so progress has to be another one. And then finally, I'm learning this now as this operator is slowing down just a tad when it comes to extreme performance, but I'm moving that energy into other parts of my life, is peace. And like Dr. King just expressed, having that self-worth and determination of achieving excellence and a commitment to internal principles of beauty, love, and justice. I think that being a productive and performance type person comes with the balancing act. This other side of the scales is to live completely in peace. And my mom does that for me and brings me back down. My daughter does that for me and gives me grace to say, Dad, it's okay, son, it's okay that you didn't get as far or as high as you could have done in that particular thing. Learn your lesson and keep moving forward. So peace would be the other.
Oh, I like that. Listen, we got this idea for this movie Top 5, actually. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard that or ever, experienced that particular movie, but it is definitely one of those things that give me 1 second. I'm hearing some sound coming through. One moment. I think we got it to stop. All right, there we are. But this movie is called Top 5. It's by Chris Rock. If you ever want to see something that's funny and just silly and take off your brain, that it was so tough. He was like, that was the theme of the movie, is like they were like, oh man, it's so hard to create a top 5 list because there's so many other things. And so I was like, man, that would be a great way to start my show, is asking people for their top 5 adjectives or words to describe them or things that they care about. So thank you for playing along with us.
You're welcome.
And I really do appreciate that. All right, so that takes me on in to our next question. 1 second. Moved off the screen here for a second. So when did you first learn about dreaming or the word dreams or just the concept of dreams? At what age or around what time period in your life did you first start to hear about dreams?
Yeah, I guess it would have been initially in 6th grade. And Miss Roby's class, she was a little bit of a dreamer. And so she really went there. And English wasn't my favorite. I love math and science. I'm a very logical person. I guess that's why I chose math, science oriented and aviation a job that, dealt so much in logic. And I'm going deep, Shawnte, on the opposite side now, as I'm creating my next life and building my next mission. I am dove deep into books that talk a lot about art and the working with the other side of my brain. And I always envied really talented performers and people that just jumped on stage and showcased their talents and that creative side, because I've wanted to go there and I just didn't get the opportunities or take the opportunities to go there. So the creative side of me is now going to blossom with the second half of life, and I'm going to use all that logic and that operationalized mind to then create with it. But Miss Roby's 6th grade class, I went really deep on reading and got deep into some philosophy and different things and different books. That's when I really discovered a love of reading. Before that, I wasn't really a reader, but she made me realize you're just not reading the right things. You're not reading the things that really encapsulate you and your personality. So she turned me on to a couple other things. When I first had a voice and I spoke really clearly and in class, and you get a compliment that you have a great voice and I love the way you speak, and even other kids to give you those kinds of compliments. I was the new guy at the end of 5th grade. So half the class I still didn't even know in the 6th grade. And so it felt good to be seen and heard and to discover that about myself. And so that's when my mind started to expand.
Me unmute myself. So gotcha. I like that. 6th grade, Miss Roby's class. Yeah, it was elementary school for me too. Before that, the whole thing of dreaming got on my radar. So So since August is the anniversary of the Dream speech, at what age, how old were you probably the first time you heard the I Have a Dream speech, and did it make any impact on you, like when you've heard it, at points in your life?
Yeah. I want to say it was 7th or 8th grade. So the next school I went to, I was living in Orlando, by the way, at the time. So I was raised in Northern Virginia, and dad was in construction. So we moved to where his brother lived in Orlando, and they were building houses in the middle of that time frame. So that would have been like late 80s, and so that would have been 7th and 8th grade, going to Howard Junior High. Really started getting to exposed with a lot more of what was going on in culture and current events and things like that. And so that was when I remember, different organizations, and it was much more diverse at the junior high, which I had been exposed to in Northern Virginia, just 20-30 minutes outside of DC where I live. And I miss that about living in that melting pot, and I know in Miami they have that. Miami has a near and dear spot in my heart, because of all the mixed cultures and everybody coming together. And I love that. And so it would have been 7th or 8th grade, and really getting exposed to that and hearing his just dramatic voice, and really resonating with a lot of different speakers and speeches in history at that time.
Like, what was so interesting? It wasn't until adulthood that I didn't even realize that he originally wrote that speech for kids, for junior high school kids.
Wow.
The first taping of it, and I had actually pulled the original audio. It's a junior high school in North Carolina. He had no intention of, that wasn't his speech for the March on Washington. So it's like, it's so interesting to know, because I'm just like, like junior high school, I think, is when many of us, like heard that speech, and to think that, he wrote that speech really, truly for junior high school. So it's just so a lot of people.
And I'd like to know more of the history too, because I don't know if it's true, but even in a movie, I heard two guys talking about it. And he pulled it out of his pocket, and he had like the original piece of paper that he wrote the speech on. And he's like, no way, that's the real thing. And it was like, he showed the authenticity of it. And he said he actually ad-libbed some of the speech, and that it wasn't all prepared, that some of it was, but then parts of it, he just kind of went off the cuff. And so I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I'd like to know.
Yeah. So if you listen to the original audio, you could see, and you'll also see him close. So they had teleprompters back then, and the organizer even said, like, they know what you're about to say. You're talking about something that big. So that he had a whole different speech prepared for the March on Washington.
Oh,
he
really?
had already given the I Have a Dream. And you can hear his friend in the back, Mahaya Jackson. She kept saying, tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream. He didn't want to, because it was adults there. So think about the type of concepts that he was, sharing for children, young people. Think about how your mind was in junior high. You're open to diversity and all of that, but adults, you know what I mean? Like, when you're talking about dreaming. So that's why for him, he did not think that of all his speeches, he wasn't coming to the March on Washington with the I Have a Dream speech, because that was a young people's speech. And Mahay, if it wasn't for his friend, and you could hear her, she continued, and you would see him, he'll close it, and he moved it on, and he knew the speech by heart, and he had it in his pocket, but he had no intentions of sharing that speech. And that was just, and they interviewed a lot of people. There was a series called Eye on the Prize, and a lot of people were talking about that moment in the March on Washington. And, of course, the organizer wasn't very happy with him at first going off, script, because, it was all worked out. So it's just so interesting to see that even he, needed that courage to share his dream, with his peers and elders and all of that. And I love the fact, I know for me, I was impacted in junior high school as well. And once I found out, I was like, now I see why it resonates with young people at that, because he really did originally write the dream speech for young people. So think about that
was like the original behind the scenes moment, nowadays, behind the scenes and unscripted and going off script is so common. And why it resonates, something like that resonates a lot of times. I go deep on a lot of these knowledge and the psychology, learning, different aspects online. And some of these thought leaders have some of their best moments just when it really is off the cuff and when it comes from the heart, when it comes from the soul. And he gave us an example of that. That's
right.
Wow,
and it also gives us a lesson in who you surround yourself is important. Think about the impact. He had a really good friend who knew that was just the right moment that the dream needed. Like, think, where will we be? Like, imagine that speech not being given. So when you go back, let's go back now to junior high school. And for those of you young people and some of my students who will watch this replay, yes, we didn't go to middle school. We went to junior high school back in the day. So 12-year-old you, what did 12-year-old you think about becoming or dream of being, back in the day?
Yeah, my grandfather owned several different businesses, trucking and produce, and different aspects of supplying restaurants and things in our area. And then my dad was in construction, so I would help him out as a kid. We tried to make ends meet by cutting firewood during the winter. And then the other parts of me, that's the strong, financial and business side. But then the other side, during weekends and holidays and during the summer, I really came alive helping my grandmother and my great aunt, her sister, sell kids' toys and novelties and balloons at fairs and festivals and fun times. So when everybody's having fun, I was the guy, setting up the table with all the toys. And from 7 years old, Shawnte, I was selling, kids fun. And so I was the fun guy. And even my aunt would dress up as a clown. And my grandmother was so big and bold with her personality and just the life of the party. These women were pillars in also the other side of my personality, where grandfather to father were very strict, very tough, very, businesslike and very disciplined. And with the masculinity side, I had these beautiful personalities and women that I just, wanted to emulate, because seeing them connect to people, they had very big, compassionate hearts, and they would just walk in and just take over a room, just like you do, I'm sure, with your personality. And so that really resonated with me. I was raised by a pack of women wolves. My grandmother had 6 daughters, and my mom was the second oldest. And so these aunts of mine, who were like big sisters, I was surrounded by them all the time. I was the oldest grandchild. And so that's where a lot of my other side of my personality comes from. So performance and productivity is one thing, but being the crew concierge and making sure everybody's seen and heard and felt and taken care of, and that compassionate side comes from my grandmother, my Aunt Barbara.
I can totally see that. That's the vibe that I got from you when we finally got to connect in person, at the XP Mentor event. So that is so good to know.
Yeah, really, you can see it, you can see it, but then you get closer and you can feel people's energy. And so I'm always like, because just a situational awareness guy, anti-terrorism in the Air Force, an air crew member, constantly being on the surveillance, right? And watching. I scour the room wherever I am, looking for that energy. I want to see who's really the connectors in the room, who are the compassionate connectors in the room. And I'm drawn to them. Yeah. So that's how.
See, absolutely. My grandmother was that way. Now, my mom, on the other hand, she sounded more like your dad and granddad. So that's where the analytical side and making sure you know where all exits are, what's going on in the room for a different reason. Like she was that person with the situational awareness. But my grandmother, oh man, she just really lit up the room. So I can totally relate with you on that one, brother. So I think it's good when you have both,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Makes you grounded. So that takes me into our next segment, which I call it Meeting Your Waterloo. So I'm sure you've heard the term, the Battle of Waterloo. So I'd like you to tell us about like a Waterloo moment in your life, because I think sometimes, and especially since I do have, some middle school aged, early high school age kids that also tune into the show. Sometimes, with the social media, it seems like everyone's had a perfect smooth ride, or maybe they may see you, Hurricane Ed, he had a perfect life, never had a Waterloo moment or a challenge ever. And I just like to ask that question, hey, did you have a Waterloo moment at some point in your journey? Just so that, you never know who it may connect with, down the line, especially.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I have so many of those to speak from, but the biggest, in the childhood time frame, the biggest one would have been as I was coming up, from football at 8th grade all the way through my freshman year of college. Football was huge. And, both working academically in the classroom, I was a little better than average because I worked hard at it and it didn't come naturally. I had to actually really work hard at getting good study habits. And the science and math, as I said, was the first love. But at the same time, other things I got pushed by were by a lot of my football coaches, and they pulled the best out of me on the field, but also they were teachers that really drove me to go take business classes and go take typing when only 2 guys were in the typing class. There was a typing class back then in the FBLA classes, the Future Business Leaders of America. And one of them was my football coach, who said, get your butt into typing. You need to learn how to type, computers are the future. And so I'm like, there was nothing but girls in that class. And he's like, duh, don't you want to be in the class? And so, I went and did what those coaches said. And so football was an absolute staple in my maturing and discipline and structure in my life, where having young parents was kind of chaotic, didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of opportunities other than that. And then I broke my hand playing college football. So went away to school, and that was huge. That was my devastating moment to be able to, I didn't think I was going to go play in the NFL. And I took 3 years of sports medicine, by the way, which I studied up on that is your bread and butter. And I did that. Miss Buttery was actually my high school sports medicine teacher, speaking of bread and butter, but Miss Buttery really pushed me to work hard in sports medicine. And so I was really driving towards that. Took my 3rd year in college, and then I broke this bone in my hand playing against my roommate of all people in practice. He outweighed me by like 80 pounds. He was the #1 heavyweight wrestler from Hollywood, Florida, from Miami, Florida.
Oh, wow.
Johnny Craig. He still is a great friend, and we just reconnected on LinkedIn. So you got to love social media to keep you connected to your old friends. And so, yeah, Johnny felt really bad about it. And it was tough. And so we were dorm roommates. And but that was a moment where for 4 months, I couldn't even use this hand, had to have surgery. my whole trajectory of my life changed. So you feel like those things are part of your identity. And I'm going through that now, and I'm doing the work now, Shawnte, on myself to be able to take all the good, do all the work of really going deep on all the things that I learned that were skills and structure and all the attributes of my personality and now my life moving forward that I took from football, that I took from the Air Force, but then realizing those things aren't all of my identity. They're just portions of my identity, but it's so hard. I think humans have a hard time. We lose that portion of us that now is identified as I'm no longer a football player, an air crew member, and so where do we go from here and how do we pivot? Like Dr. King said, take that all with you. And if you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. And I've always said that too. When people get on a path to change, it's not an overnight thing. And most kids, I got to tell my almost 16-year-old all the time that change is a progression, and you're going to make small little changes that compound over time. So bad things compound over time, but also really good, great things that you slowly crawl, walk, run, fly, they compound over time. And so changing my identity, I thought I was going to snap my fingers, take a few business classes, Shawnte, and I'd be off to the races. And I realized I got a huge piece of humble pie this year. And I almost lost my condo. I almost had to move my kid into my parents' house. Like, I was willing to make some sacrifices, but then I had to make some really smart decisions. And that is to, for the first time in my life, do a lot of deep self-work and go deep on the things that I do have and the things that I'm grateful for. Give myself grace and some time to make these changes in my life that need to be changed so I can progress, like Dr. King said, in the right way, to do it the right way. And also release some of those old things that no longer serve me. Give myself grace and forgive myself for not making the decisions that I coulda, shoulda, woulda made, but I realized that I am a better person because those mistakes were made, because those things were wrong, that I can forgive myself, I can forgive others, I can move forward in my life by releasing those things that no longer serve me and only add to the ways that things serve me to move forward.
Oh, I love that. And I thank you for that. Like, I love when people are honest, that, hey, listen, it wasn't all peaches and cream, didn't work out perfectly, dotted every I and crossed every T. And guess what? It happened in that order. Right. I just love, I'm like, so far for the last 2 years, I've not had one guest that said, oh, no, it was perfect. I never had a Waterloo moment.
That's right.
So
That's
I'm
right.
glad.
I needed the tough love. I needed that 24-year-old young coach to say, hey, man, you broke your hand. You're going to switch gears. You're going to leave this school. You're going to go pivot and go do bigger and better things. You got all this up here to use, and you don't just got this. Your game of football could be over. But he said, I take 30 minutes to get out of bed some days, and I got to play college football, and I even played some semi-pro ball, but I paid a consequence for it. And so he gave me some tough love that I needed to hear, that I was not going to be in the NFL and I was not going to make a career out of football. So it happened the way it happened, and I can't change it. And it's time to move forward. Same thing with a commander. After 26 total years, 22 as an aircrew member, he said, you've done everything here. You've done all these jobs. You've had all this success, and you've grown and you've moved on, and you can tell my heart wasn't in it anymore, and he gave me the tough love I needed. And so I feel like that's part of my brand. Smart, tough love is who I am. And as I build out a coaching business, as I build out a speaking business, as I write some books and get on some stages with you, girl, we're gonna do it our way, but also be able to be open and authentic and vulnerable to give ourselves the tough love that we need, and be able to speak to those stories of when we received the tough love that we needed to be able to pivot and move forward.
Absolutely. I thank you so much for that, Ed. That was just spot on. Couldn't have said it better. That's like the perfect soundbite. And you answered our question that that was going to be next, because I love the fact that you showed them, you showed the thread of how you actually, got to transition and pivot, through your Waterloo moment. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm glad you did pivot, because I probably wouldn't have met you had you not, right? So that takes us into our next segment, which I like to call Boom Shakalaka. Like boom, shakalaka, shakalaka, shakalaka. I said boom. Okay. So I love giving back. And I know that we all have different initiatives or charities or things that, I just like people to be made aware of, because I do have some busy people and some even athletes who tune in and watch the show, and, are looking for ways to just support a cause. And so I always like to ask my guests, what's a charity or an initiative or something that you care about that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Sure. I'm moving towards that, and I'll let you know now. I'm in the process of learning more about how to help teenage kids, especially single parent kids. That's near and dear to my heart. I had, and myself, my daughter and I had a major setback this past fall, and her mom had been checked out of her life, and not been in touch for about 5 years since I got custody when Amelia was only 6. I remarried for a few years, and this woman had never had kids of her own, and we weren't aligned in our goals and values, and she just really wasn't the motherly type, and that caused a lot of rift and pain in our family. So I moved on from that marriage. But then as we were transitioning after the pandemic, and then with my career, I actually wrecked my car, didn't have a car. And then, so it was like I call the storms of life, Shawnte. I got to fly into them. Well, sometimes you create them yourself. Sometimes they're external and they come at you when you least expect it. But Amelia's mother committed suicide this past fall, and we had to deal with that. It was a very emotional time. And so I want to find a charity to be able to go support that. And together with my daughter and I, we, can go and help other children that are going through that hard time of parents through divorce or a parent's loss, and that kind of thing. And so it brought my daughter and I closer together. We have so much resilience, and we went to counseling, and we're learning each and every day with different support services, and knowing that you can go ask for help. And asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. And Amelia and I sat and went deep on the things that matter to us most. And we opened photo albums and really deeply connected to some of the things that I love to tell, great stories about her amazing mom and how great she was in her childhood and all the beautiful things about her mom. And so I want to find a charity that helps children to be able to go through that grieving process and pull the good things and be able to release themselves of the bad things. Secondly, I'm working with a mentor that's a full bird retired colonel, flight doc, that I got to fly with for a part of my career. And he's building Mission Next Foundation for veterans as a transition. There's a lot of resources out there for vets as they transition, a few that I've used and different things that I've needed, but none that really encompasses the entire family unit. pulling in the spouses, pulling in the kids, and everybody kind of design and build the mission that is the next plan after the vet leaves, because of veteran suicide and a lot of emotional and mental health problems that vets go through, because they either can't, or they don't have the resources, or they don't have the support, or they don't believe in themselves to do the work to release that identity we talked about, and that identity work. I think that that's a huge endeavor. And so he's designing and building, and I'm part of the team that is the Mission Next Foundation for transitioning veterans in the military. So that's another charity I'm working on.
I like that. Well, shout out to Mission Next, and I am certain you're going to connect, because there's definitely, I know people out there that are experiencing what you and your family have experienced, unfortunately. And I will be adding you guys to my August monthly health prayer list. We do a list every single month, and we just pray for, people around the globe. So I'll definitely be adding y'all name to that list. So my heart truly goes out to you and your daughter. Okay, so that takes me to my next question, which is, who's one or two dreamers? I know you got to know some other dreamers, because dreamers usually know another dreamer that you'd like to give a boom shakalaka to.
Sure. Another part of my Mission Next team is Kathy Amat, and she is an amazing collaborator. She's a doc also. She's doing her own life coaching stuff on the side. And she has that big, compassionate heart of the flip side of me that I need in my life, through like my Nana, my Aunt Barbara gave me. And so she keeps us grounded, me and the flight doc, Paul Nelson. Voodoo is his call sign. So Doc Voodoo and Hurricane Ed, we get grounded by Doc Kathy, and she really brings the warmth and heart and compassion to, a couple of Charge the Mountain operators. And so she has really big dreams and goals, and we get to talk about them almost weekly. I'm going to connect with them after this call today, actually.
Oh, I love that. Well, Doc Kathy, the 1Hunnid Health Show says, boom, shakalaka to you. Oh, thank you so much for sharing her with us. And thank you so much for, supporting Books in the Hood initiative last December. I super appreciate you. That definitely went to a young man that was actually at one of the orphanages that we showed up to. So I want to just tell you, thank you. That was my first boom shakalaka when I started this segment. And I really, truly just wanted to tell you publicly, thank you, brother, for just
you're welcome.
Into the lives of kids. I really do appreciate you, giving that gift of not just giving something, but books really kind of go way beyond what just a dollar does. So I really appreciate you supporting our reading.
I got to get back to Miami so we can do a National Hurricane Center tour and get the kids over there and see the big brains, the scientists that forecast the storm. And it's a big show,
Yeah.
You see it on TV.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That's the scientists and the forecasters that use our data to increase the accuracy of forecasting the storms for anyone that's affected through the Caribbean, Mexico, and Central America, and throughout the entire U.S. The National Hurricane Center in Miami is where all the big brains work to be able to make that magic happen of increasing the accuracy of those forecasts and the warnings and all the different aspects of making sure that people are prepared for the storm season.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I hear it's a really, really great tour they have over there, too. All right. So I call this like my Mariah Carey health fantasy segment. So what's a short health message, or just, a few lines or a quick, thought that you would share with 12-year-old you going back to junior high school, middle school age? What's a message, just something short and sweet, but what's something that you would say to 12-year-old you about your health looking back now?
I would say that being able to connect deeply to your inner feelings and your connection to yourself, that is an emotional and mental health tools. If you can learn those now, which I'm instilling and ensuring my daughter takes the time to do journaling, to do some meditation, even if it's just closing your eyes and listening to your favorite music on your bed for a few minutes. And so instilling some of these rituals in her now, I think are going to have a long lasting effect. We talk about physical health so much in the way of what we put in our bodies and how we move our bodies. And that is very important. As an athlete, since I was, 12 years old, 13 years old, lifting weights for the very first time, it really became a staple in my life. I went on to be a personal trainer. I went and got trained at the Dallas Cooper Institute in Dallas, the Dr. Kenneth Cooper Institute. He was the man that put the healthy snacking on the map back in the early 2000s, when they got that patent to work with Frito-Lay. And so they started the baked chips line and things like that. So I got to go to Dr. Kenneth Cooper, and it's an amazing campus. If you ever get a chance to go, Shawnte, and it's just all health and wellness all day. So I did a 5-day general purpose personal training course that was like 3 times as much as any other one, but the Air Force paid for it. So I could talk my commander into letting me go to one of the best institutions in the country to go get that knowledge. And so I became a personal trainer for my unit when the Air Force pivoted and we started training like the Army. So we were doing lots more, like 3 times more, with push-ups and sit-ups and running. In the past, the Air Force had a subpar standards when it came to physical fitness. And when we raised those, like in 2002, 2003, I was like one of the head people that jumped into that, and then went on a few years later for a commander to see my efforts. And he made me the wing fitness manager for the largest Air Force Reserve wing in the country. So here's a master sergeant and an enlisted man, telling 1,500 people, what to do, and leading the charge of making sure that we're in compliance with those standards and people are raising the bar on their physical health. But to go back, I would think I'd tell the kids that once you establish some standards in your life of making sure that you really understand the food that you're putting in your body, that being consistent, 3-4 days a week minimum, even just getting out and walking. I do rucking now where my knees can't handle it from years of football, but just getting out and doing something that's consistent with a friend. But then the mental and emotional health side, I think is what really wasn't opened up to me even till later in my Air Force career. And to know that you go deep on these things and really understanding the different mental and emotional health tools to be able to let stress go, to be able to have understanding of where your deepest, negative thoughts comes from, having a positive self-talk acumen inside, how you talk to yourself and the relationship you have with yourself. Those impacts are tremendous when it comes to your mental and emotional health. That those are a balanced approach. Comprehensive health and wellness is what the Air Force preaches: mental, physical, emotional, and social, and being able to connect with people and say when you're not having a good day, say when you're not doing well, and know that that's a sign of strength when you're not doing well, to let people know that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I like that. All right, so that takes me into my next question, which is books. All about the books. What are 2 or 3 books maybe that you would recommend to us to help us elevate our dreams, that are just some good books that maybe you've come across in your life?
Okay. And just recently, like I said, I'm going deep onto the creative side. And so, as a logical operator my whole life, I missed out on so much to be able to go and explore areas of my mind that I totally forgot were there. Like I began to dream again. I had to relearn how to dream, Shawnte. I had to go back to say, what does Ed, Nana called me Eddie Bear. What did Eddie Bear dream about back then? She said that they got it wrong, and all the kids of the world had a teddy bear when it should have been an Eddie Bear. And so I had to go like find Eddie Bear again and did that work and really find the things that are deep into my own creative mind. But a couple of books I just did that were mind blowing. Now I'm going to go back. I listened to them on Audible. My way is to listen to it one time through on Audible, then get the book itself and highlight and make notes and put stickies inside the book when I listen to it a second time. And then the third is to actually take and how I'm going to use that or apply it in my life and how I can create a concept. I'll make a little drawing or I'll make a little 2 or 3 word concept from that idea. But the two that stand out are Rick Rubin, who's one of my favorite music producers, started in the 90s with LL Cool J and Beastie Boys and all the hip hop from my childhood, near and dear to my heart. And went on to produce, I think, Mariah Carey and a few other really large, really big scale performers. But he just did the creative act by Rick Rubin. So music producers usually have a way of tapping into the creativity of some really high level performers in the world. And that's how they're able to pull those things out of them. So he just wrote a book on his process of how he's able to pull those things out. The second is a guy that really resonated with me because he thinks like a logical operator, is Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. So he goes into his way and his philosophies on when you set down to create. He's a writer by trade. So he goes deep into his way, a psychological way to get himself pumped up, just like an athlete would get ready for the game. And they all have their individual rituals on things that we do before we're going to perform, before we're going to go take the field or take the stage. We do different things. And so he talks deeply about his process and what he thinks, what he does, his rituals leading up to when he's able to perform. And that is his writing process. So he's a writer. So that was really eye-opening too. I love those ideas. And so it's gotten me to where I started with 10 minutes of journaling a couple months ago. And now I get myself up real early. Sometimes it just pours out of me and I won't even set an alarm or set a clock, and I'll go into work late if I have to, but I'll write for an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, and I won't even realize that the time had gone by. So it's just pouring out of me, that creativity. So I think kids really need to know that it's all in there. You just got to tap into it and just turn the well on and it'll just start flowing. That faucet will just start flowing with ideas when you go to that creative side of yourself.
All right, I love that. And so I'm a big believer in making sure that we get some homework. So what are 2 tips that you'd give us to elevate, our dreams? What are 2 things that you'd like to leave us with?
Okay. The most important part of, I think, my transition journey has been anytime I pivoted in life, I've always, until now, just made a quick decision. I've had an opportunity where a friend or a mentor or a family member or a coach or teacher has said, okay, go there, take that direction. And that's good in a sense that we have those opportunities and we see those opportunities. And excuse me, and we know they're there. However, sitting down to really do some critical thinking, look up critical thinking and critical decision making, and how to go about doing that, weigh the pros and cons, and really do prudence work to be able to decide within a few days. If you have some time, you have a few days, you have a few weeks, you have a few months, like really take the time to go deep on what is the next direction, and be willing and able and have the courage to, after, even if it's just a few months, or if it's even a few years, if it's a job or a relationship, or if it's a direction you're going in life, have the courage to pivot and say, this is not moving me towards goals. This is not aligned with values. It doesn't resonate with me, like to my core, and being able to have that courage to pivot and change gears. And so learn that process. And as I'm going through this transition, I also took on some challenges. I joined Barbara Majeski's group with you, and we did some physical health challenges, and we're moving forward in our lives in many ways. But getting someone to go with you, as we call it wingmanship in the Air Force. So having a buddy, I call it an accountability buddy. And so your accountability buddy is someone that's going to hold you accountable no matter what, and call you out on your BS. You call them out on theirs, and go with you in that. And so we met through that as well, in Clubhouse and Barbara Majeski's challenges. And so anytime you're doing something physical, there's also a mental element to it, and it goes deeper. And so I think that's what's missing, is to be able to go and do a challenge, something way far more than you think you could, and start that process, learn from it, and then grow from it, and then move on to the next one. And so I just did that too. I did a 2-week boot camp with another coach and a ghostwriter person on Clubhouse, David Strauss, his Energy Vampires course. And I went deep on where are negative thoughts and feelings coming from internally, and then where are the negative and toxic people, places, and things that are external in my life. And so I'm really setting up healthy boundaries and tools in my life on how to deal with that stuff. So if you can critically think when you're making decisions, and you can really set up some healthy boundaries, and making sure that you're feeding and giving input in here with positive and structured, very good things, and putting up, a boundary to the negative people, places, and things that that aren't serving you and moving you towards good directions in your life. Those would be my two.
Oh, well, thank you. So now we got to cast ourselves in the future. So let's think about 10 years from now, Ed, Ed, in that body 10 years from now. I always like to make sure we're setting a health intention. So what's one future health dream for Ed 10 years into the future?
Yeah.
No matter how big or simple, just what's a health dream?
I want to be one of these older dudes that are online that's still kicking butt. I love kettlebells. And so I think that the world would be a better place with mobility and agility, especially for as we age, to be able to have the strength and conditioning using kettlebells, because it's a small device that can go many different places, and you can really get a lot of work, strength, conditioning, and agility within one piece of equipment that is small. And so I'd like to have, a portion of something I'm doing online to be able to have that. A couple of buddies in the Air Force, a few of them snake eaters, I call them, were combat controllers or, special ops, special warfare kind of guys. But not everyone has to be that. You don't have to have done those really hard jobs in order to be someone that is moving people towards a healthier lifestyle. And so I'm wrapping my head around that too, and knowing that I have skills and they can be increased as I learn and grow and build an audience, and to be able to have that as a separate platform. I want to get even more proficient at the way that I use kettlebells to keep me in shape and keep me mobile and keep me have a really good agility and strength and flexibility as I age. So I want to do that for myself, but then also lead others in that, and especially people that are above 40 in their age. Well, all ages really, but specifically for that target group is 40 and up. To give them those tools and just really simplify how they can use those. Even with just one small kettlebell, you can do so much.
Absolutely. I like that. So you want to work with those kettlebells. I love it. Yes, yes, yes. Well, I'm inspired by there's a lady, she's 100 years old. She's the world's oldest officially, power lifter. And she's winning competitions. And I'm just like, I want to be able to lift at 100, whatever amount of weight, but I want to be able to lift. I want to be able to compete, at that age. So I love that you definitely want to work with those kettlebells. And I know that that's something that you'll definitely crush and accomplish. And I love that you tied others into your health goals. So before we let you go, we got to know, how can the people find out, connect with you online, get some more Ed in their life?
Sure. Right now, I just have a couple of personal pages. I haven't started a business page or anything like that. But I post really, just life scenes and behind the scenes stuff of what's going on with me. But Clubhouse is a great tool. I've got my daughter on there, crazy enough. I've got her into a couple of women's only, entrepreneur rooms. I'm getting her thinking that. She's got her sights set on college and a few different paths also. But I also want her thinking in terms, this new generation of digital revolution that we're going through. Everyone's going to have a personal brand. Everyone's going to have, even if you never make a dollar, you're going to have a social media presence, and it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And so I'm really inspired to help young entrepreneurs and do the mentorship, just like I did in the Air Force, for the next generation right behind me. Anyone can teach anything that they've learned, and they have a skill, and they're teaching the person directly right behind them. And so I think everyone needs to really think in those terms and have a personal brand online. So my Facebook is just my name, Ed Scherzer, Scherzer, and Instagram, I'm a little more active on there at Zipper Suit. So I had a flight suit for 22 years that I wore almost every day, and it has a zipper. It doesn't have buttons. So zipper_suit, SUIT, zipper_suit is my Instagram. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well. I think I'm going to do a professional LinkedIn page, and I'm probably going to get my start there with my coaching to help people pivot, Shawnte. I want to develop a training platform that helps people with their transition, but also, just like you and I connected, is that your transition in life, if it comes with a transformation and you do that over the course of 6 or 8 or 12 weeks, that it's going to have more impact in your life, because it's going to be a pivotal moment that you can look back and reflect on and say, I changed these things in my life and I change the direction of my life at the same time. You can build muscle and lose fat at the same time. You can also change gears and paths in life and also transform here in life. And so that's going to be my platform for helping people coach through that transition and be able to be a strategist for people in that.
Oh, well, thank you. We have definitely loved having you as our special guest. So I hope you hang around, after we, stop the recording. I am going to make sure I leave everyone with our 1Hunnid health tip of this month. And it's all about the king of all mushrooms, chaga. Chaga. Just like the king that we're honoring this month with elevating our dreams, Dr. King. Listen, chaga mushroom elixir. Chaga mushrooms are the king of all mushrooms. So I will be putting a link inside of the show notes. Those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to go ahead and copy and paste that link if you want to find out more information. But listen, when I tell you, you want something that's natural, easy to take on the go and put it in your tea or put it in your coffee, easy, whiz, boom, bam, and you're out the door, but something that will help to fully detox you and modulate within your body to be whatever you need it to be. And for those of you who need some extra energy, so while you're elevating those dreams, listen, it usually comes packaged with cordyceps mushrooms, which is the bomb.com when it comes down to getting natural forms of energy. So we're naturally detoxing and naturally getting in energy, by the Thunder Twins, I call them, the chaga and cordyceps. Chaga. Okay, that's the Miami coming out of me. So chaga, CHAGA, get you some, the king of all mushrooms. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in to the 1Hunnid Health Elevate the Dream special episode with my man Hurricane Ed. Woo!